Good. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen with you as usual. Today session I've entitled "It's Okay to Cry." Um, Sort of understanding the whole process of grief. Uh, I share with you the words of Jesus where he said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." You see, this is the way God has created all of us with very deep feelings. Uh, that's the part of our creation. That's the way God has made us. And so, whenever we encounter pain and sorrow, it is both natural and good to be deeply moved. All right. So, don't be surprised when moving through the wards. Um, of course, this applies when if you get a chance to go in physically, but even on Zoom, sometimes you will experience this. That you may experience a deep sadness. So, I allow myself to enter the feeling. So every time someone comes on the Zoom or I'm meeting them face to face, I try and put myself into their shoes. I try to imagine how I would be feeling if I were them, and very often a sense of sadness will come upon me, um, and I don't try to brush it away. I I embrace it. Uh, and should you feel like crying, I would say don't hold back the tears. All right, just allow the Spirit of God to lead us in this. Blessed are those who mourn. Yeah. And if I'm with the people in person, sometimes uh, as I'm talking to them, they also begin to tear. Um, I try to understand their tears and try to, if you like, articulate those tears into a prayer. Or even the feelings that I am feeling with them, uh, we translate that into a prayer. And sometimes I would say to them, you know, uh, in other words, when people show signs of emotion, um, just to stay with it for a while and don't try to say, oh, no, comfort them too quickly because, it, it, you know, it's, it's something very natural and their feelings of sadness we want to cherish, if you like. And I often would say to them, if your tears can speak, what would they say? But if they can't articulate it, I'm trying to articulate that for them, their sadness. Yeah. So if I'm there with them physically, I don't offer the tissue pack too quickly. Of course, I put it within reach for them if they are sad. Um, but it's important to learn to stay with the pain for a while and let them express their grief. So, the scriptures teach us that we should rejoice with those who rejoice, but also that we should weep or mourn with those who mourn. And when others share their pain with us, as may happens quite often, we just weep with them. And that's what we are called to do. And when they question why God would allow them to suffer so badly, we just listen and we weep with them. What we mustn't do is try to defend God, and even if they say they're angry with God, we don't try to explain on behalf of God. We just listen quietly and we sigh along with them. We stand with them in their pain. So, the Bible itself has got many angry prayers where the psalmists express their anger and their frustration at God. And we're encouraged to pray like that. And so, if we listen attentively, we can hear their pain. We help them to articulate their pain or even their confusion. It's perfectly acceptable. Now, you Google anywhere and you will find commonly people talking about the 5 stages of grief and pain and mourning. Okay? when a person has suffered a painful loss, so many of them that we will visit have suffered the loss of movement. They can no longer walk, some of them. Some of them suffer the loss of speech. And this is a serious loss. It's so humiliating for them. They can't they can't bathe themselves anymore. Can't even walk to the toilet by themselves. Embarrassing for them to use diapers. And all this translates into a sense of grief and loss at their ability to do things. And grief often comes like waves in an ocean. That's what several people use to describe grief. They sometimes come very strongly, and you feel the emotions of grief. And when that happens, don't try to stop it. Let it flow. Weep. But at other times, there are moments of calm where nothing is felt, and that's quite okay also. Sometimes, the ocean, there's a gentle breeze, a wave. It's quite delightful. And sometimes, even though people are grieving and mourning, there can be times of joy and happiness. So, whatever comes, just accept that this is part of life. And grieving is a part of life. And sometimes people will forget about their grief and are able to be happy. And that's good too. So here are the 5 stages. The first one is called denial. The person is so shocked that he or she can't believe that it has happened. And they can't accept it. And, they used to be able to move their hands so freely, and now they can't. It's a real shock. And when you talk to them, they almost, it seems to me, they say, okay, this is not happening, or it's only temporary. But actually, we know the situation is very unlikely to change. But so there's that phase of denial. Then there's anger at the person who caused this. Sometimes they're angry at someone who caused their pain or their grief, or they're angry at themselves, or they're angry at God. And so we accept that as part and parcel of what life is. And as I said, we don't try to defend God or say, "Oh, don't be so angry. Have a better attitude." No, they have to express that. It's part of coming to terms with their loss. And then sometimes people go through a stage of bargaining. They're pleading for a miracle. God, if you do this, I promise, and if they do that, we just echo their prayers. We just play that role. We're non-judgmental. We listen, and we present our requests to God along with them. Then sometimes there's just depression. They're just so emotionally exhausted by all this. They don't feel like doing anything. And then again, our role is just to be with them in their sadness and in their depression. And hopefully they come to a point of acceptance, and slowly they begin to learn to cope with this new reality that they're with. So these are commonly thought to be the various phases or stages of grief. But what you need to understand is that these stages do not necessarily occur in the sequence that I just described. They sometimes do, but they often go back and forth, sometimes skipping a phase or stage. So our role is just to pay attention, see where they are, and just be with them as they grieve, as they mourn their loss. But usually all stages are experienced at some point. And if we stay with people long enough, we will hear all these different phases. Yeah. Our role is just to be beside them and journey with them through their grief. Any questions?
So the people who we do meet at uh, the nursing home, so yeah, from what I can see, there's a range of emotions that people are feeling. But sometimes, um, sometimes there's some of them can't really communicate verbally.
Yes.
So, in terms of accompanying them, um, I'm sure they will want to maybe they will want to communicate some of their feelings.
Yeah. So what's your question?
Question is, yeah, how do you accompany someone and communicate?
Well, just by being there, you're already accompanying them. All right. And we're training ourselves to be able to like listen, to observe and see where they are, and if we can, we articulate their grief for them. Yeah. So I also went through this particular session to say that very often after a session, I may feel sad. I may leave the session feeling sad because I've been with them and they have been sad, and that's okay. But we share with them the grief, and as it were, it affects us, and that's why I sometimes will say, come just once a month, because I don't want you to be dragged down too much by these feelings, because you need to learn how to recover from it yourself, but not to be afraid of these feelings of sadness and mourning. It's natural and a part of life.
Yeah. Fortunately or unfortunately.
Yes, it is. All right, I'm going to stop recording. Thank you.